We don't have that yet, so we're just going to load. We're going to load Gary. Oh, I am Skid asked. Sorry to be off topic, but I gotta ask. What's next to VLC? Which way? This way or this way? This guy? All right, I'll do both. This is Chrome. Probably knew that already. And this is GitHub. This is just the GitHub for Windows client. And if you don't have it, it's great. It allows you to browse your repositories or add them and do a lot of just really neat GitHub commands without having to open a web client or fool around with a console. So GitHub, that's all that is. Look at me, I'm learning how to stream. I got water and all kinds of fancy stuff. Okay, so I got Gary. We don't really care how I got him. I just got him. There's better ways to get him in the future. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab this. This would also be something we'd handle a different way. So, and we know enough to do all this. We just don't have the time or the knowledge right now to get it done. But ideally, you'd say, okay, grab this character from the database, get their coordinates, their x, y, figure out what room they're in, and then draw that room and draw their status bar, and that'll be this world initializing. IronSkit says, I didn't even know that a GitHub for Windows Client existed. I didn't either. I'm going to tell you that right now. I had no idea. And it really shortened out my learning curve in terms of Git. And it really made me a convert. There's nothing more fanatical than a convert. Okay, so I draw the room, I draw the status bar, and this essentially, this is my world. I've initialized my world. Better ways to do it, but I have it now. So what I want to do next is I want to do a console.readline. And then we're going to see what we get back. Yep, and we're going to call this, also going to call this command. And then we're going to say command parser. Where are you at? We need a new command parser. Var command parser equals new command parser. Okay. Command parser. So we've got one. Dot execute. And we need to pass in our hive mind. We need to pass in our room. We need to pass in Gary. And pass in the command. Okay, so in theory, what we've done is we've allowed ourselves to input commands from the game itself, right? Which takes the place of all of our test stuff down here, and even older test stuff from way back in the long ago. So what are we missing here? Well, when this executes, that's going to be it, right? Nothing's going to happen. So we need to do this in some sort of recursive function where it says, okay, when this is done, read line again, and then do a little loopy loop. We'll get to that in a second. Right now, we just want to make sure this all works. And we might run out of time before we can do the recursive function. That's okay. And then we'll just do a read line here, or a read key maybe. And adapters are tricky. They're always going to be tricky, and they're always going to be messy at first. So let's just see what happens. And we'll come into our command parser, and we'll do a little debug action here. Let's start. All right, this is what we want to see, right? We want to see our game initialized, and we want to see our health. And then we want to be able to type in a command. So I want to type in let's start off with something fun, right, or something helpful anyway. Let's not. The world isn't about violence, so you want to heal Beth. All right, so just looking at it, just in terms of the aesthetics and what we want, it feels good, right? We've got a little color differentiation from the command. I'm sorry, not the command. The status bar, which means that in our rendering engine, we reset the color appropriately once we were done. Escatite asks, how do you set the color of the console text? Excellent question. Let me run over there real fast since we're talking about it. And so this is why I have a render, right? So we have our game engine, which is in our core, and then wherever we decide to surface this game, we're going to have to have rendering engine for that environment. So if we made a Unity front end, it'd have to figure out how to render all this stuff. So all you have to do is type in console.foreground color and then console color, and you'll get a bunch of options. So I've got cyan, but they give you quite a few. And then to reset the color, you just call reset color. And that's how we're rendering out our world. So even our rendering stuff, I'm not scrolling too quickly, even our render stuff, there's a little bit of meat to it, because we are building a world, right? Okay, so we're in here now. So we've got our hive mind, we've got our room, we've got our player, and we've got our command. Our command comes in as heal Beth, right? Which is, it's actually a really good thing to know, that even though we're on this line, and we top console.read line, we're actually capturing everything after that, right? You could easily assume that if I do console read line, it's going to give you back everything that's on that line. For better or worse, the console has all these limitations, which makes it a pretty poor rendering surface. But we're going to work with it, and that's just one of its quirks. Escatite asked, does that work in C++? It should, since console is part of the .NET library. Something special about C#. So it's one of those things that you get by buying into the whole .NET ecosystem. Okay. Let's go back over into our command parser. So, it doesn't start with fight. It doesn't start with repair or negotiate. Does it start with heal? It does. So immediately we see that our starts with heal works. I can immediately tell you that we might want to do a to lower on the whole command when it comes in, just so we know we're dealing with lowercase characters. Target name. So I'm going to replace heal with an empty string and call trim. So now I just have Beth. And then I'm going to go through all of my game objects and then equals to Beth. So let's see if that works. So far so good. So let's go into target, player, Beth. Liking that. Escalate says, so I keep bugging, is there an include I need? There is actually, for the consoles type stuff. So you're going to need to come off of system. So using system. And it's system.console.whatever. Oh, where are we? Command parser. Okay. And then I'm going to execute that. So I'm saying that the sender, who is the player, wants to heal the target, and off to the hive mind it goes. That's all the same as we've always known it. And you notice these responses are very, very quick. That's good, right? We aren't doing a whole lot of heavy lifting, but we definitely know there's a problem if this early on we were getting anything that wasn't just an instantaneous response. And then we display the command, and we draw the status bar for the sender, which is Gary. So everything's kind of wiring up in this almost kind of auto-magical kind of way. And then we read key. So here we are, right? So we're right back to our command line. So let's do a little bit of super simple recursion, and we'll take it from there. And when I say super simple recursion, I do in fact mean super simple recursion. I'll do it up here. I'm going to move it to the bottom just to keep all my classes, neat. But actually, let's do it inside of render. So inside of render, I've got draw room, I've got draw status bar, I've got display command, I've got replace last line. Let's add a region here called helpers. I'm trying to break up a code a little bit. And then I will do a public static void. And so, in the past I would have said await here, because I would have said like await command. The problem with this is now await has a whole lexicon behind it, because there's the async await pattern that got introduced. So if I say await command, it's going to start communicating something different than what I intend to people who read my code. So I'm just going to say command prompt. But I'm not going to take anything in. So what's going to make this recursive is I come over to program, and here comes the magic, folks. I'll take in my command parser. If I just said I wasn't going to take any dependencies, that was a lie. That was a horrible, horrible lie. Because I'm going to take in everything that my command parser would need for execute. Oops, almost everything. Okay. And instead of Gary, I'm going to say player. And then, if you aren't familiar with recursives, I've heard it described for things like this, that it's a, how do they say it? It's a $10 word for a 2-cent idea. Just kind of insulting to the idea, but so I come in, I grab my command, and then I go to the command parser and I execute, and the command parser takes care of all of my rendering, and then it just drops back out because it's also a void. So what I do as my last step here is I just call command prompt again and wait for all the crazy to start happening, because you're going to see that in a second. Okay, so this is going to execute in a loop. So, and it's going to warn me, it's going to say method is recursive on all execution paths. It is. And it wants me to privatize this, inspect it for recursive paths. It doesn't think that I mean to do this, and I absolutely do, right? Because what we want to do is we want to give the exit ability to the command line, right? So if we said quit, that's what would break us out of this. So now we're kind of going into the game